Okay, let's try that one more time. The Packers victorious over the Chicago Bears, and all I gotta say is Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers. You gotta be kidding me with all that. Clearly, when the Packers had to turn to Deshaun Kaiser, things looked bleak. Aaron Rodgers off in the bowels of Lambeau Field, as he called it. Sure looked like Brian Gutekunst's decision to punt at the backup quarterback spot was going to come back to bite him. But then Aaron Rodgers saved the day. It's funny, Aaron Rodgers saved Brian Gutekunst. He saved Mike McCarthy because let's face it, I don't think you can look at that first half of football and think anything else other than Matt Nagy kind of handed Mike McCarthy and Mike Pettin to a certain degree their lunches. They're on national television. Rodgers is amazing. What happened to the Bears offense? Well, Matt, I think the Packers settled down on defense. There's no doubt about that. But, they, for the most part, I think they kind of emptied the playbook, the Bears, early on. It's always advantageous when you have all off season to get ready for that first kind of Slavo, so to speak. And I think Nagy really wanted to jump on the Packers early, which they clearly did. But once Pettin adjusted, I thought, more than anything, I thought the talent level in the secondary really elevated the Packers tonight in a way that just hasn't been there in the past. We've seen games like this where teams have gotten leads and then they can kind of have their way with the Packers defense. I thought the likes of Josh Jackson, Jair Alexander really allowed them. And Kentrell Bryce, I thought, had a pretty strong game. A guy who really kind of took his lumps early in camp, did not look very good throughout the preseason. I thought he played a really strong game tonight. But I thought overall the talent level in the secondary was very apparent. Now, some of this is, you've got a second-year quarterback making, his first start of a new year in his second year. I thought Trubisky played pretty darn well overall. But I think Pettin had some good wrinkles for him, especially in the second half. Thanks, Paul. It's really nice of you to say. Why would they let Rodgers come back if they suspected an MCL? Because he can't make it any worse. I have literally played football on a torn MCL. I did it at a Bleacher Report flag football game about 5 years ago. I mean, if you can handle the pain, you go out there. And that's what Rodgers said essentially afterwards. Now, we don't know if it is an MCL, but that's the suspicion. And like Roger said, they're paid a lot of money, and it's a big-time game. And if they can't make it any worse, let's say he is playing with a MCL, not teared or otherwise, if it's just slightly torn or what have you. If he can't make it any worse, simply by playing football, you go back out there. That's what you're paid to do, and that's your job. And Rodgers is not only a professional, he has the heart of a champion, and I think you saw that tonight. Mistake having Kaiser as the backup instead of Boyle? No. Did you miss the last preseason game? Brett Favre, yes, Aaron. Funnily enough, Aaron Rodgers name-checked Brett Favre in his post-game press conference tonight, and he has mentioned Brett a few times at his locker. I'm pretty sure that's the first time he said Favre's name in a post-game presser. He said, playing behind Brett Favre for 3 years, you learn you have to be pretty tough to play this position. And that, I got to be honest, that's the first thing I thought when he came back out of the tunnel, started the second half. That's clearly what we got used to with Brett in town all those years, where it seemed sure any other quarterback would have sat it out, said, I'll wait till next week. Rodgers wanted to get back out there. And I can't tell you how impressive I found the entire performance from Rodgers tonight. His entire ability in the second, his ability to come back and play, completely change his game because he couldn't run. You saw that in the second half. He could not run, which obviously is a big part of his game. It is unbelievably impressive what we just witnessed, and I hope people appreciate what Aaron Rodgers just went through to provide an incredible performance, all for our entertainment. The prodigal son has returned. Bob, if you're talking about Aaron Rodgers, you are absolutely right. Is Mac worth 3 first-round picks? No. If it comes back as MCL, does he play, though? We'll see. I think that'll be up to the Packers. Again, I think it'll come down to if he can't make it worse by playing, yes, he'll play. Matthews played on the ground way too much. Sean, I couldn't agree more. And I am someone who has defended Clay Matthews quite a bit down the stretch here these last few years, but his performance tonight was abysmal. And that roughing the passer penalty, if that had cost them a game, I mean, that was one of the dumbest plays I have seen on a football field in quite some time. I hope he gets up in front of the defense at least and says, thanks for having my back, because that was an unpardonable sin on his part. Francis, thanks for checking out Gut Reactions. Sorry it wasn't much longer. I kind of cut it short because I wanted to watch McCarthy and Rodgers. They'll be a little bit more robust going forward, hopefully. But it was good to get it back out, back in the saddle. Great to be watching the game as a fan again. Got to be honest. Are you concerned the offensive playbook hasn't changed much? Not really. Can't say I'm concerned, Grant. Simply because I didn't suspect it had changed that much. I mean, I know Joe Philbin changed a lot in regards. Mike, I'll let Aaron know about the hurricane party offer. I always kind of suspected. I know, Joe Philbin came in and changed some of the stuff they do up front, protection-wise. McCarthy mentioned the digit system, which I suspect is a reference to the changing of the nomenclature when it comes to how they call protections. But, as far as the play call, play design, how they go about deploying their personnel, not a lot has changed. And I didn't suspect that it would. But I think tonight started to give us confirmation of that. Looking smooth for soaking so many. Oh, can I tell you how crazy and weird and kind of surreal this whole situation is that I'm on Facebook Live talking to you folks after drinking my way through that game. And when I was on the beat, I never drank during a game, ever. And, I come on and do these Facebook Lives. That's the experience I have of sitting down and talking to you guys through my phone. But now, I just housed a 18-pack of Miller Lights, and I'm ready, man. Let's go. So it's kind of weird. It's surreal. I'm back on the beat, but I'm not, because I'm doing this for Cheesehead TV, which is my website that I co-founded with my great friend Corey Banke. And yeah, the whole thing, it's just very weird, but it's great. And it was great to yell at the TV tonight, and my kids were like, "Daddy, you're back." They literally, my youngest one literally said that, because it was old times. It was fun. John, Run D needs work. I couldn't agree more. It was funny how they were really kind of gashed early on, and I thought Kenny Clark played well. I thought Mike Daniels and Muhammad Wilkerson left a lot to be desired for the most part, although I thought Wilkerson did a great job two-gapping on a specific third and short where he stayed in his lane, in his gap, and really helped blow up a play. And for the most part, I think, that front that was much heralded throughout the offseason left a lot to be desired. I don't doubt that the Packers will go back and look at some of the run fits and the run calls, especially on early downs. And some of the run production from the Bears tonight, I think, was a product of Nagy keeping things so off kilter, keeping them kind of one step behind, a lot of unscouted stuff. But it's a concern. There's no doubt about it. But first and foremost, you have to defend the pass in the NFL. And I think as the game went on, and as Pettine's guys kind of calmed down and found their equilibrium, I thought they did well. Trevor freaking disappearing Davis. Ward, yeah, that's a weird thing how they literally announced that Trevor Davis had a hamstring injury an hour or so before the game, and that he was going to be out, and then, he was inactive, obviously. What was he doing? It wasn't in pregame warmups, because it was prior to pregame warmups. So how did he hurt his hamstring today? What was he doing? I don't know. It's just weird. Although I will say, how great was Randall Cobb on punt return tonight? Clearly he had a bunch of fair catches, but he also had a really sweet return there early on in the game. And can I just say, talking about Randall Cobb, Speaking of Randall Cobb, every single one of you who ever jumped in my mentions on Twitter or here on Facebook Live who said that they needed to trade Cobb or cut him to simply save a couple $1 million on the salary cap, I hope you have turned in your cheeseheads. Because Randall Cobb showed tonight how important he is and how effective he can be and how much production he can add to the offense when the ball is actually thrown to him. It's amazing. Oh my God. What did you think about the Packer defense? I thought Pettine was really vanilla early, and I think part of that was about him not really knowing what to expect from Nagy. You knew about everything he was bringing from Kansas City. You knew how multiple they were going to be, how many different formations and personnel groupings they were going to use, and how they were going to kind of use misdirection and Tariq Cohen, et cetera, et cetera. So I think in response to that, anticipating that, I think Pettine tried to play it pretty vanilla early on. Because you know you're going to get a lot of stuff out of the Bears, and you're going to get a lot of different looks. So I think he kept it simple. And because of that, Nagy was able to kind of take advantage of it. But as the game wore on, I thought Pettine did a really good job of adjusting. And like I said earlier in the video, I think number one, more than anything else, I think the talent level in the secondary really showed up tonight. That's a game where they probably would have been in trouble in past years simply because of the lack of personnel on the back end. But tonight, I think it really came to the fore. Matthews is done, washed up. Nick, I'm not ready to go that far. I think he can still help them. I think he can still offer something on the defensive side of the ball. But, yeah, tonight was a pretty pedestrian performance, no doubt about it. What did you think of HaHa's performance? John, I thought he was up and down, kind of what we've come to expect. There was one second down run in particular late in the game that was really bad, where he came up and it looked like he was going to stop him in the hole, and Howard just kind of tore off to the left and left him in a lurch. But he also had some really solid plays. The one in particular on the third down on the throwback from the Bears where they tried to get leak the tight end out on the left side, and he came up and stopped him short of the sticks. I thought that was a great play. It was a great read. As Collinsworth said on the broadcast, you see that play a lot in the NFL, and it generally works because guys are so keyed up to try and stop, the flow to the right, throw back to the left. I thought that was a really good play on HaHa's part, and I thought for the most part he actually held up pretty well. But you definitely saw some of the inconsistency and some of the over-aggressiveness, over-pursuit that has kind of marred his performances in the last year or so. Do you expect Graham to get going soon? Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's the whole it's the great Packers tight end summer thing where whether it's Jared Cook, whether it's Martellus Bennett, whether it's Jimmy Graham, like these guys, they work on stuff in the preseason and in the summer, and you think, oh boy, these guys are going to kill it when the regular season starts. But the Packers don't feature the tight end in the way they do some of their number one wide receivers or their running backs out of the backfield. It just doesn't seem to be a real kind of, we want this guy to be the number one in our progression. I think, for the most part, to answer your question, yes, I think Graham will be a little bit more productive going forward. But that said, you look back at when they quote-unquote ran the table a couple years ago, a lot of that was due to getting Jared Cook back, but it wasn't always because Jared Cook was being thrown the football. Like McCarthy said that year, there's no stat to quantify the attention a guy takes away from other guys to keep them, help them get open. And I think for a large part tonight, you saw some of that with Jimmy Graham, where he may not have been catching footballs, but he was productive in the sense that he drew coverage. There were some times you could see coverage being rolled to his side, to wherever he was on the field, and that was opening things up, particularly for Randall Cobb. So, I don't think he's ever, because Rodgers, as Rodgers always says, he throws to the open man, right? And I don't ever think Jimmy Graham's going to be a 8, 9, 10 catch guy for 100 yards and a touchdown or two, but I do think he will be productive, more so some games than others, depending on the defense, and his presence is going to allow other things to happen and open up other guys. And I think, like I said, I think that's what you saw tonight. Do I see 12 playing next week? Daniel, for the most part, yes. That's my gut feeling is yes, but you never know. And I think that, for the most part, is what Rodgers is doing when he's talking in his post-game press conference about needing to, get testing done tomorrow. My hunch is he'll get testing done. He won't practice much of the week. He'll probably practice Friday, or Saturday, and people will freak out, and for a good reason, because they probably can't win without Aaron Rodgers. But I do expect him to play on Sunday against the Vikings. How do I see pet and game planning for the Vikings? A little more pressure, I would think. Like I said earlier, I think for the most part he played it very vanilla early on, not knowing what to expect from Nagy. But I think he'll have a better handle on what the Vikings are trying to do after seeing them today and seeing kind of how they use their personnel. Defense did great, or else we wouldn't have caught up. Well, Rodgers mentioned that in his post-game press conference. I mean, their defense absolutely kept them in this game. And that's, with a bunch of points being kind of gifted to the Bears, where you had points taken off the board with the fumble by Kaiser and then the pick six. I mean, all those both clearly are not on the defense. For the most part, other than that first 10 points they gave up, they pretty much shut down Chicago. They did a pretty admirable job. What do I think about McCray's performance? I mean, another perfect example of a guy who needed to kind of settle in. I thought the second call on him was really ticky-tack. I mean, you see that 100 times a game in any NFL game, where you have a guy blocked up and he tries to slide off of you and you hold on to him as long as you can, but then you let him go. You see that not get called 99 times out of 100. And that second one just happened to get called. But like then he settled in, and I thought he did fine. And the offensive line as a whole, I thought, once they settled in, and of course some of it is, the Packers being forced into the short game because of Rodgers' injury. But why wasn't that the game plan coming out? That's what drives me nuts, and that's kind of what boggles my mind, is that McCarthy knows that the Bears got some talent up front, they can get after you. And yet he calls these long developing routes, and they keep going 3 and out early on in the game. And the complete kind of nonsense of continually bashing their head into the middle of the Bears' offensive line or defensive line, that just drives me nuts. I mean, I get it. You want to, quote, establish the run. You got to keep the defense honest, whatever. But run off tackle, use a zone read, like do something other than try and run in the A gap where you haven't been able to get any push whatsoever. And that's no knock on Lane Taylor or Corey Lindsley. They just couldn't block those guys up. They just couldn't do it. And it was very apparent early on that wasn't going to happen. Yet McCarthy keeps calling it and keeps calling it until it's 20-0. That's the kind of stuff that drives me nuts. Biggest surprise performance player? Ooh, good question, Ryan. I don't know. Honestly, nothing surprised me about any of the performances tonight, individually. Kind of surprised me how flat they came out early on. But, individual performances, nothing really surprised me. Do you see a need to sign Eric Reed? Yes, I've seen it all offseason, but they're not going to. Run the ball, go to half, 10-0. Anthony, I know a lot of people are killing McCarthy for calling that screen play late in the half. It's Mike. I mean, I get the kind of desire to blow him up for that. I can't. I mean, he's trying to manufacture some points. He's trying to get into field goal range and get something on the board prior to going into halftime. I get that it's, you want to keep things safe, simple, etc. Get all that. I'm never going to kill a guy for trying, because when McCarthy doesn't, and he does shut it down, people go, oh, there's conservative McCarthy. I can't kill him for it. Should Rodgers take over play calling full time? No. Nice, we always come out at the slow game one. Daniel, I agree. McCarthy's timeout at the end of the half. I didn't hate it. Is McCarthy on the hot seat this year? Good question, Brandon. Not particularly, but I tell you what, if Aaron Rodgers ends up playing 16 games, and who knows after tonight, but if Rodgers plays 16 games and the Packers don't make the playoffs, McCarthy is gone. So in a sense, yeah, he's kind of on the hot seat. All right, everybody, I'm going to have to jump. Thank you so much for all the questions. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to yours. Make sure you're checking cheeseheadtv.com for all the latest. My gut reactions are already up. We'll have all sorts of stuff throughout the night and into tomorrow morning for you. Make sure you're following Cheesehead TV on Twitter, on Facebook, etc. All of it. Heck, next week I think we'll even have a Twitch account since our guys there want to play some Madden and put it up on the old website. I'm all in on that. So, yes, Cheesehead TV. Check it all out. Tons of great stuff for you. Thanks a lot, everyone. I can't believe the Packers won that game. Aaron Rodgers is the fucking man. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good night.